All right, Dan, we're live now. So we somehow dragged and fought our way here. We had a number of issues. I just tweeted out the link, so people should be joining us soon. But other than our 500 issues trying to get the show started, how are you doing this morning?
Yeah, I'm good, Matt. I mean, I don't think a Google Hangout and a Sportable Hunt Takes and Hotcakes would be the same if we didn't have about 17 technical difficulties with Google. But good job, Google. This is still a pretty good and useful tool you allow us for free. So I can't crap on you too much, but hopefully we can get through the rest of the show without any more technical difficulties. I'm not going to hold my breath based on the past, but we'll try to give you as much information, as much matchups, and as much fantasy football talk as we can until we have to go or until we get kicked off by Google. So
Right. That's always the extra variable. I mean, we can't hate on Google too much because this is a free product and it's very good, but we do seem to get an inordinate amount of issues, and maybe that's because I'm the host and I am a well-known idiot. So we'll see. But all right, let's just jump right into it and not talk about the platform anymore because nobody cares.
yeah.
So I'm gonna get right into questions. That we've both gotten this morning. And, as a reminder, if you want to ask us questions, you can always tag Dan or I on Twitter, or you can use the hashtag, which is hashtag hot takes and hot cakes, or you can even comment on the YouTube page if you're watching live. Those come directly to us as well. So there's a lot of ways you can get in touch with us, and please do if you have questions, just shoot them our way. We're more than happy to talk about them. So we'll get right into it. First one I've got this morning, this comes from @T_Dub_Raw on Twitter, and he asks, Torrey Smith or Dante Moncrief or Jordan Matthews in a PPR league? A lot of interesting options there, Dan. Does any one of them stick out to you?
I think this is a classic case of you need to really pay attention to where your matchup is and where your standing is in the league. So if you're looking for a high upside play, I actually think the best move here is to roll with Torrey Smith. I think that the Steelers secondary has proven to be a mess over the course of the year. They're starting to generate a little more pressure through the blitzing schemes of Dick LeBeau and just through some better play, quite frankly, from their defensive line. But in the back end, I should say, in the secondary, they haven't really been as strong. And I think that Flacco will have time with Eugene Monroe and Clutch Usmeli playing their second game back at left tackle and left guard. And I think we'll be able to dial up some big plays with Torrey. But as it always goes with Torrey Smith, based on the type of routes that he runs, he's kind of a boom or bust play. So I think that really that's the high upside play. If you're looking at your league and you think you're going to be down by a lot, or you're the heavy underdog, or you really need a big high points game, I think the move might be to go ahead and play Torrey. However, the safe play I think this week is Dante Moncrief, and I think it's interesting to call him a safe play considering he's a rookie, set to make only a second. I won't even call it a start because I'm sure Hakeem Nicks will draw the honorable start, but set to make his second. Yeah, but set to make his second. What's it called? Big impact in a game. Yeah, there you go. Appearance in a game where he's supposed to make a big impact. He'll probably play 30 to 40 snaps, I assume, in this high-powered game. I think it's going to – we'll touch on this Colts-Giants preview a little bit later, but I think it's going to be a pretty high-scoring matchup just based on how the two teams are playing right now. And I think I'll have a chance to really make some big plays. The Giants' secondary is beat up. They've lost three of their four corners. Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie is going to try to play. He's injured though. Even after the bye, he hasn't looked good in practice this week. So he may be susceptible to a few big plays if he gets matched up with Moncrief. And let's face it, Moncrief is a really, really, really good talent. I love scouting this guy to Ole Miss. I stick to the point that I made when I looked at him then. I think that a lot of the reason people were downgrading him was a down senior year, and really that was the point. I mean, I'm sorry, that was the product of poor quarterback play and an overall bad team that he was on at Mississippi at Ole Miss last year. Obviously, they're much better this year. So I think that those were unfortunate and unfair reasons to downgrade Moncrief, and I think he's a really, really good hold, even for redraft leagues this year. I mean, as we always say on the show, or as I always try to say on every show, talent always and generally wins out for the most part. So target the talent and play him this week as a safer play, or if you want to go high upside, Torrey could get you a few big bombs. How do you see it, Matt?
Yeah, actually, I was going to say Moncrief either way. And this is an important point to make during this week. We have 6 teams on buys, and because of that, you're going to have to be forced to have these debates where you're debating between guys who aren't necessarily, sure things. or whatever. So I actually think Moncrief is the highest upside play anyways over Smith, and that's because he's going to be playing in a game between the Giants and the Colts where he's going to have it's going to be a higher point total. Two really good offenses going against each other. Both of their defenses have been okay, but neither's a shutdown unit. And we know those. And I've been saying this to people all week. We know those Steelers-Ravens games. Like I know this didn't happen the first time they met, and they're not quite like the defensive teams that they used to be, but we know those games always have the potential to turn into like 9-3 contests, where Smith might have like 4 catches for 50 yards or something like that, a really limited impact. Whereas I think, with the Colts and Giants going back and forth with each other, you have just a better chance of hitting big with Moncrief. So I actually think he's both the safe play and the high upside play. So out of the three, I'm going with Moncrief. And you had a lot of really good comments about him as well. So good takes from Dan there on Moncrief. Okay, so we'll move right along. And this one, I wanted to kick off with this one, but this came into me like an hour ago, so I forgot I wanted to lead off with this one because it's kind of the biggest story. It has to do with the biggest story of the day. Our buddy at Josh Kalachi, fellow writer on Sportable, and he does a lot of great work all over the place. He asks us, in DFS, is Whedon, that's Brandon Whedon, is he a GPP play or are you just throwing money away by doing that? And to frame this question, if you live under a rock and you didn't know, Brandon Whedon's actually going to start for the Cowboys today because Tony Romo is out, and so Whedon, who is a Browns cast-off, was an old man first-round pick. He's getting a little bit of a second chance to show what he can do. He'll be starting for the Cowboys today against the Cardinals. So, Dan, I'll ask you, framing this question, just kind of give me. We'll talk more about the game later, but just for now, let's focus on Whedon. Do you see him? What do you see his fantasy impact being today?
So I kind of look at this Dallas Cardinals game a little differently than most. I think that Dallas is going to struggle to control the clock and struggle to keep time of possession as they normally can, and they normally do very well with. And I think that because of that, the offensive production is going to be a little down for them. They still have an incredible offensive line, and of course the Cardinals are not the same defense they were last year. Patrick Peterson hasn't been quite the same player. Their defensive line is beat up. They've lost their 2 impact and very good inside linebackers from last season. But at the same time, I've seen what Whedon can do and what he can't do. And while he does have a good arm, and while he can drive some balls in, there are ways to get to him. And I think at this point, the book is kind of out on him for defensive coordinators. I would be shocked if Todd Bowles and the Cardinals weren't at least planning a backup plan for, okay, Whedon will play this week. How do we scheme against the Cowboys if it's Whedon versus how do we scheme against the Cowboys if it's Romo? And Whedon tends to lock on to his primary target. It's an issue we see, in my opinion, with every quarterback who doesn't succeed in the NFL. You can see it anytime you watch Michael Vick play if you want an example of what I'm talking about. So just turn on your TV today and you'll see it on every play. But besides that, I mean, it's a really big problem. Todd Bowles is really too smart of a defensive coordinator to be fooled by somebody who has such heavy limitations. So I really wouldn't expect a huge game out of Whedon. He's just not a good enough player. He's not in a great enough matchup. And he's going to have his issues, and the turnovers will probably end up killing you and giving you negatives. So I'm not going high on DFS for him. There's guys in DFS like Ryan Fitzpatrick who are almost as cheap. Probably not almost as cheap, I'm sorry, because Whedon probably has an incredibly cheap tag, but who are cheap enough to the point where you can roll them out with more confidence, I think. How do you see this one, Matt?
Well, I do want to talk more in depth about Whedon and his effect on the rest of the team later when we break down this game. But for now, I'll say to Josh out there that I did throw one lineup out there in a GPP tournament with Whedon as my starting quarterback, just because you can make some really interesting lineups by doing that, and we'll talk more about that with TJ later. But as for Whedon, the good thing is that this Cardinal secondary has been really bad lately, and I think that's good news for someone if you have to get desperate and stream Whedon. But I still think like you said, there are better options out there. Maybe in a tournament if you throws a couple touchdowns, you can have something there, but we'll see how that goes. So that's a good, interesting question from Josh. Kind of funny. I know I answered back then like this question makes me laugh for so many different reasons because it just shows how disgusting we can all be with fantasy football that we might actually consider starting Brandon Weeden in any sort of format. It's funny. But, oh my God, I know. But we'll talk more about that game later, and like I said, Whedon's effect on the rest of the team. So a question you just sent me now, we'll read this one off. This one comes in from @Brian Case, and he asked us, should you start Vincent Jackson or Ruben Randall, 10-man non-PPR? Dan, you can go ahead and take this one because my nose is about to fall off. So you go ahead and kick this one off again.
You put that nose back on first, Matt. And then when we get to, you're good. All right. So answering that question, I think Ruben Randall is my easy call here. I think that this is just a pure matchup play. So Vincent Jackson's been injured, playing through the rib injury, and he hasn't been his self that his normal self. And really, if you watch the Tampa Bay Bucs offense work, you'll see that Mike Glennon is not forced into throwing to him. He's not locked onto him. He's distributing the ball well around, and especially targeting rookie wide receiver Mike Evans, who's been really good this year. So I don't see any clear favorite in targets for Jackson. So I don't really see any reason to view Vincent Jackson the same way we did last year or the 2 years before that, because he has been a very consistent receiver over the last 3 seasons. Looking to Ruben Randall, you've got a player who's going to be in a high-scoring matchup against the Colts pass defense that hasn't been as good away on the road as they have been at home. And really, he's turning into Eli Manning's first or second favorite target in the red zone, depending on if you want to consider Donnell's explosive days, where he's getting targeted a lot in the red zone, or the ones where, just from a consistency standpoint, it's mostly Randall. I think he's 5th in the NFL in red zone targets. So I think Randall's going to have a big day against the Colts. I think Vontae Davis, who's set to suit up for the Colts, will probably play more of Odell Beckham at split end and on the right side at right cornerback, and it should leave some really good opportunities for Randall. So I'm going with Randall here. Do you see it any differently, Matt?
Yeah, I think I like Randall a little more than Jackson. I wrote in one of my columns this week, a new one I'm doing actually. I'm sure I'll reference it a bunch while we're here. It's called Black Holes and Champagne Supernovas. It's a matchups-based column, and just in general, I was talking about how there's a lot of situations that the Bucs could exploit against the Browns. Their run defense isn't good, but we have no idea what their running back situation is going to look like. It looks like it's going to be a lot of Bobby Rainey because Charles Sims, despite being activated from IR boomerang, he's not going to play today. Doug Martin is out as well, so it looks like it's going to be Bobby Rainey and Mike James, but still a situation I would avoid. And yeah, so I agree with you that Randall. Same thing with the passing game. You know, the Browns secondary is not good, and there's some room for Jackson to exploit. But I just don't really trust anything with the Bucs offense right now, aside from, ironically, Mike Glennon as a streamer option. But even that, I have tempered expectations for. This is a really bad football team, and in general, it's just sinking down the drain faster and faster. So yeah, I'm with you on Randall. Like I said, that's going to be a game where there's a lot of points scored, a lot of back and forth, and you want fantasy players that are going to be in games like that. So that's my take there. Moving right along to a few more questions. And this one comes in from @RSmith82. It's Rebecca Smith, and she asks us, start RG3 or pick up Andy Dalton? Yuck. I'll start this one off since I don't seem to be having a sneezing fit at this exact moment. So I'll go ahead and start this one off. RG3 and Andy Dalton. I'm going to go with Dalton only because Griffin is away. It's his first game back. We really have no idea what he's going to look like. He does. I mean, we've been kind of pumping up the return of Griffin simply because those other options were so poor. We're so poor on the way, on the way to get to this point. Especially Kirk Cousins was just a total mess. Griffin, he wasn't, like I said, he wasn't looking good before his injury. He was looking timid. He was looking, not comfortable on that knee. I sincerely doubt that another injury to his lower extremities would make that any better with time. So I'm thinking that you should probably wait and see a good game out of Griffin before starting him, especially in his first game back. And against the Vikings defense that can be had through the air, but they're also really ferocious up front. Everson Griffin's playing really well this year. Sharif Floyd is playing has really taken off the last couple of games, and same with Anthony Barr, who despite a lot of criticism from draft people over the summer, he's really had in the spring and in the summer, he's really had a great rookie season. He's tremendous as a pass rusher, a really useful tool for Mike Zimmer. So I'm just shying away from Griffin, and while I think that the running game could control the clock against the Jaguars for the Bengals, I still think it's a good matchup for Dalton. The Jaguars defense has been playing better, but it's still, I'm not expecting a great game for Dalton either. There's a lot of other, I'm not really streaming him in any situations. I'm not really playing him in any daily leagues, honestly. I don't have any lineups with Dalton in it. I think it's a good matchup, but I just think game flow and otherwise, it's not really a situation I'm looking to exploit. So in this situation, I'm going to say Dalton, but that doesn't mean I'm excited about him for the rest of the week. Do you disagree with anything I just said there, Dan?
For the most part, we agree, Matt. I think the best thing that Matt touched on there that you really want to just take into account is this Vikings defense is playing much better football over the last few weeks, and that's why this is really just a bad matchup for RG3 and the Redskins. Really, the Vikings have stood out as a run defense, and that's kind of where you can kind of get the Redskins reeling. If you stop Alfred Morris in the run game, which is kind of what they want to establish first, it puts them in a worse position passing the ball and makes them more predictable, and it allows defenses to tee off on their weak offensive line. And that's really what I think will happen in this game. So that's one of the reasons I don't want to start RG3. And my other thing is I think this RG3 hype is a little unfounded. Yes, he had an incredible rookie season. He was incredible for your fantasy teams. He was also in a very different offensive scheme that kind of utilized his skill set a little better. And in this Jake Gruden scheme, we haven't seen any success yet from Robert Griffin. He had a horrible preseason, a bad training camp, and he was really bad at the beginning of the year in this offense. Yes, he's had some time to maybe digest it, but it hasn't been practice time. He's only been practicing in the last couple of weeks. And I really still struggle to accept our Robert Griffin as a really great, talented quarterback. He's an incredible athlete, no doubt. There's no way to deny that. But he doesn't really hit the seam passes that well. He doesn't throw the outs that well. He doesn't have that much zip on those passes. He can throw a great deep ball. But this, to me, I think he's not the greatest decision maker, so I'm not really all in on his talent. So for those reasons alone, I really like Dalton in this one. I do think, opposed to Matt, that Dalton will be a little better than Matt thinks. Not too much better because, like Matt says, the game flow is the real issue, but getting A.J. Green back will really help him. There's no denying what kind of impact A.J. Green makes on Dalton and for this entire Bengals offense. And I'm not so sure I'm buying into the Jaguars' resurgence on defense just yet. This will be one of the toughest offensive lines they have to match up against over the last 3 weeks. But, again, here's an idea for a streamer if he's still on your waiver wire, and he damn well should be, Ryan Fitzpatrick. We'll touch on why a little later and more in depth, but I think he's got a better matchup than Dalton for sure, and I don't think he's a guarantee to be that much less explosive than Dalton either. So that's one guy I might go with over Dalton. But, again, I'm kind of okay with Dalton, and I'm definitely in on him over RG3.
Yeah, definitely. I think we agree there. We can talk about that Fitzpatrick thing later for sure. So move along to the next question. A few more that you sent me. And this one comes in from @Starlon008. My running back situation is dire this week. I need to start Talaferro, Andre Williams, or Niall Davis in a PPR league. Boy, well, these are some rough options as well. I'm going to say I'm over. I'll say this right off the bat. I'm over Andre Williams. I was never high on him as a draft prospect. I was never high on him. As once we saw what he was once we saw him on an NFL field, it was apparent that this is still the same guy from Boston College. He's really big and he can run into people, but he's not even a super powerful guy. He's not agile and he's not an asset in the passing game. So I'm not considering Williams anymore. I know he's still going to get some workload, and that's good, but still, especially in a PPR league, I don't really want any part of that. So it comes down to Talaferro and Niall Davis. Talaferro had 2 touchdowns last week. Is that right?
Yep.
And yeah, so he really looked like he was vaulting over Bernard Pierce, which, thank God, because Pierce is not a very good player. Which is too bad because I stepped on that landmine in drafts all over the place. I should have been smarter there. But Talaferro's looked pretty good. He looks like he's a goal line back there, which is nice. But again, how many points are going to be scored in this game? That's a concern I have with pretty much everyone in this Baltimore-Pittsburgh matchup, especially Talaferro, since he's not like the starting running back. That's still Justin Forsett. It just looks like he's the goal line back at the moment. And that brings me to Nile Davis, which is intriguing because if you think about the game flow, the game script of this one, when the Chiefs are winning, Davis gets to get some work as kind of a grinded out, backup running back, and he can make big plays. I mean, we know he's a really talented guy who can break a long run. He took that kickoff back to the house a week or two ago. He's a really talented guy that can make a difference in your lineup. So I'm actually going to be a little weird and say Davis just because I think the Chiefs will blow out the Jets this week, and I think Davis will get some playing time. I can totally see if you're going to start Talaferro, but I like the idea of if in a desperation play like this, most likely none of these guys are going to score you, even double-digit points. But I really like the upside of sticking Davis in there because I think he'll get some work, in a blowout like this. But he's the guy that to me is the most intriguing big play asset. What do you think, Dan?
I think you hit it right on the head. I think the thing with Andre Williams is I'm not going to say I completely agree with your assessment of him as a prospect, but we can touch on that another time. But I do think
he sucks, so you're wrong. But
we'll see about that. But I think that the one thing we can say about Andre Williams is that he's not really a great redraft player right now in leagues. For the fact of the matter is, if the Giants can get a huge lead on a team, and that's 10, 14 points, if they were playing the Texans like they did earlier in the season, or the Falcons, or the Redskins, all 3 teams they had strong leads over, yes, I wouldn't mind Andre Williams as a play because he's their lead back. That means the running game's getting going. But I think that the Giants will fall behind to the point where they're going to need to throw the ball this week, and they're going to need to spread it out. And unfortunately for the Giants, that means a lot of Peyton Hillis because Peyton Hillis is just the back they can trust in pass protection. Andre Williams has blown a lot of blitz protection so far, and he hasn't looked like that strong of a blitz protector. Hillis has. Hillis doesn't offer much for this team, the Giants, but he can do that at least. So I think that his role won't even be as big as people assume. And like you said, Davis is just an interesting play because if the Jets do get blown out by the Chiefs, and they really should in Arrowhead, there's no reason for them not to, especially with Michael Vick at quarterback, then Davis is going to get some burn, and Davis is going to have upside to score touchdowns once that Jets defense kind of wears down from being on the field for 40 to 45 minutes or however long they're going to be on the field for, considering how many turnovers Vick is probably likely to make. So I think that Davis is an upside play here, and I think you hit it right on the head, Matt. You made the call there, so good one on that one.
Well, hey, we'll see. It looks smart now, but who knows how we'll feel about it Monday morning. But that's the fun part of all this. Okay, so we'll move along to our next question. This one comes in from another one of our fellow Sportable guys. This one comes from Nathan Powell, and he is at NPowellFF. He asks us, Manning or Manning? 0.25 PPR. And this is a typical Nathan thing to do. It's a very trolling question. I know I responded back and just said Cooper. Start Cooper Manning, whatever. But so if we want to seriously discuss this, who do you think has a better game this week? Obviously, the 1 quarter point PPR isn't really a factor, and that's just Nathan being Nathan. But what do you think about Eli or Peyton Manning this week?
I mean, you got to go with Peyton Manning. That's pretty obvious in most situations. It'd be stupid to bench him. He has such a high floor. He's going to get you no matter what, 17 points. But at the same time, I wouldn't discount Eli Manning from having a big week this week. The Giants are going to fall behind. He's going to need to throw the ball. That's how you beat the Colts. I think the Steelers proved that last week. We'll touch on a little more in depth on how they actually did beat the Steelers last week by throwing the ball, because it wasn't a way you normally see teams do it. I'm sorry, beat the Colts. So we'll touch on that in a little bit. I have some insight on that. But, yeah, I think this is just a nice little troll by Nathan, but we're going with Payton.
Yeah, I think you go with Peyton in a redraft league, standard league, but I tweeted this morning. This is like the disgusting time of the year where every NFL analyst also becomes like a part-time weatherman, and we actually we actually already had that happen in the show. In our show earlier in the year when we talked about the windy conditions up here in New York.
Right.
But
so and then it backfired because they were throwing all over the place in that game. I remember that.
See, and that's why this is so futile.
I hate this weather. I'm done basing it on the weather. I'm done.
I agree. I totally agree. But I will say that I do think that the blizzard conditions up there, and then I did see one picture with poor Sal Palantonio looking all distressed up there in a giant blizzard, which is really funny. But I think it is enough for me to shy away from Peyton as like paying up for him in a DFS.
DFS, yeah, agreed.
Yeah. So, I think Eli is capable of a big game as well. It's not a real question, but thanks for your help, Nathan. Anyways, so. This next one comes in from @Stephanie971. Real big fan of the show. He's always watching and asking questions, and that's great. We appreciate Michael. So he asks us 10-team standard wide receivers available: Martavis Bryant, Devontae Adams, Michael Floyd, Jarvis Landry. Should I drop Patterson and Holmes, and which two should I pick up? I tell you, looking over this, that. I love a lot of these receivers, and so I'm not really interested. I'm sorry, we just got a great tweet from TJ. He said, "I'm talking wind when I get on, whether you like it or not." So it's good to hear from TJ, and he will be on to talk daily fantasy later, and I guess also play part-time weatherman, which should be fun. I did have a joke for him when he gets on too. So we'll see you soon, TJ. Appreciate the making me laugh in the middle of the question, but anyway, so back to what we were saying. There's all these good wide receivers available. I don't really want to drop Patterson at any point. And I know even in a 10-team league, like it's hard not to. I'm encouraged that he had a decently good statistical line, but it was against the Bucs. I don't really want to drop him at any point. Andre Holmes is another one I want to hold on to. So it's tough for me to say like that I want to drop either one of these players. But I also love what I've seen from Martavis Bryant. I'm still a believer in Michael Floyd. Jarvis Landry, he doesn't really do it for me at this point in a redraft league, especially a small 10-team one. Devontae Adams is another one in a 12-team league. I think he's rosterable and you can stream him every now and again. But in a 10-team league, I don't know if I really want to take a chance on that. But there's all these are great options. So I don't really have, except Jarvis Landry and maybe Devontae Adams. Do you have any strong stance? Because to this question, I don't really want to drop Patterson or Holmes, even though I love Bryant the rest of the way, and I'm still a believer in Michael Floyd. What do you think, Dan?
I think that you pretty much touch on a lot of things. I love Martavis Bryant coming out of the draft. He's a guy who's 6'4" and runs a 4.39. He's as close to a poor man's AJ Green as you can get. Will his role be there entirely for the rest of the season? I'm not sure we can predict that, which makes him a little more unpredictable in redraft leagues. But my call here is you got to immediately get to your wire if he's still there and drop. Andre Holmes for Michael Floyd. You can't leave Floyd on wires. This is the back end of your bench. You want to go for upside. Is there as much upside in the Raiders passing offense as there is in the Cardinals passing offense? The answer is, quite frankly, no. Michael Floyd's still a very talented player. I think he's more talented than Andre Holmes. I think he's in a better situation, too. So I don't think Floyd should be on the wire. I think that was an overreaction by your owner. Even if you just have to, in your league, if you just have to stash Floyd for a few weeks until he gets healthier, that's fine. This is the back of your bench. So to me, keep Cordero Patterson because, listen, he's got a lot of talent. His role's finally starting to formulate a little bit. But go ahead and drop Holmes for Floyd. As tough it is, because I'm like you, Matt. I do like Holmes, and I like his role in that offense. I just don't love the Raiders' passing offense for fantasy purposes.
Yeah, I imagine we're going to be talking a lot about Michael Floyd through the course of this show. And if you're interested, anyone out there, he was the receiver. I did the reception perception article over at Football Guys this week. I did it on his 0-point fantasy performance, and came away with some interesting conclusions. So if you want, you can check that out, and I'll probably tweet it out a little closer to kickoff as well. So just some interesting things there. Okay, this one comes. We're gonna wind through the last few bit of questions. This one comes in from @Wake PU Hicks 00. I hate reading these Twitter handles, but and he asked us, I need to pick 3 out of Ben Tate, Michael Floyd, Jerick McKinnon, Vincent Jackson, and Chris Ivory. It's a half-point PPR, and he's leaning Tate, Floyd, and Ivory. I think by our last discussion that we're going to agree and say you play Michael Floyd this week, and Ben Tate, I agree, you play Ben Tate. I'm getting a little worried about that Browns running back situation, but against the Bucs, I still think you can play Tate as long as he's the lead back there. He's leaning Chris Ivory, but I'm going to say McKinnon over Ivory. That Washington front seven is a little scary sometimes, but probably more as blitzers and pass rushers, and so I still think that McKinnon can have a pretty decent game, and the problem for me with Ivory is that it's so scary in a game like that we expect the Jets to get blown out, and in Kansas City against a good defense, Dontari Poe and all the boys. I'm not really interested in starting Chris Ivory this week, and Vincent Jackson we kind of already touched on. So Dan, I'm going McKinnon, Floyd, and Tate. What do you think?
I'm also going McKinnon, Floyd, and Tate, that exact 3 combo. But
of course you are. You're smart.
There we go. I actually have the strongest take in this one on McKinnon and not Floyd or Tate. He would be my number 1 option. Granted, McKinnon didn't have the breakout last week that I was hoping he would have in a really good matchup against the Bucs. A lot of that can be pinned to the fact that Gerald McCoy just had an outstanding day in the middle of that defense, really set the tone, dominated, and he's not going to see that this week. The Redskins don't have a Gerald McCoy, especially not now. Barry Cofield's a solid nose tackle, but he's been out for the year. He's on IR, and they're really weak in the middle of that defense. Keenan Robinson and Perry Riley have been better in coverage as inside linebackers, but they haven't stopped the run well. Last week, DeMarco Murray ripped them up for 141 yards and just 19 carries. Even Joseph Randle chipped in for 23 on 3 carries. So it's really a defense that can be exploited. And let's remember with McKinnon, while he didn't have you the fantasy football week you expected last week, he was really good in real life. He averaged 5.2 yards per carry last week. It was 83 yards rushing, just 16 carries. So, and that's his season total, by the way, is 5.2 yards per carry rushing the ball. So he's just a breakout to me waiting to happen. I think this could be the real week that it does happen. Let's remember about McKinnon, he's got a lot of breakaway speed and size, and I think at the 3rd level, the Redskins have really struggled to defend the run. Safety Ryan Clark's playing through an injury. I forgot what it was. I'm pretty sure it's a broken hand or something really bad like that. He's just trying to play through. I'll take a look. Maybe it's an elbow, but he's been really, really, really bad at tackling this year at the 3rd level, and he leads all safeties with 14 missed tackles this season. And then cornerback David Amerson, he's been equally as bad. He's the 2nd worst cornerback in run defense on Pro Football Focus, so he's also at 4 missed tackles. So there's going to be a lot of matchups and to exploit in this one through the middle of the defense for McKinnon. I think he's going to have a lot of easy potential broken tackles at the 3rd level. So I really like McKinnon in this one.
All right. Well, yeah, I think you hit it on the head where you said, McKinnon we're all just waiting on that breakout week, and it could be this one. He's been solid. Yeah. Well, it certainly could be. So that kind of interesting, one Minnesota player to another. This question comes in from @Benjamin or Benjamin. Oh my God, I'm so bad at this. On Twitter, he asked us, it's a 2-quarterback league. Should I start Bridgewater or Brandon Weeden? We talked about Weeden a little bit. So would you start him over Bridgewater this week, Dan?
I wouldn't. I would roll Bridgewater. I'm probably a bigger Bridgewater believer than most, but I really don't think this matchup's a really bad one for him. The Redskins had a really, really, really good defensive scheme to beat the Cowboys, and they beat them. But even this week, Jim Haslett said that's not something we can repeat every week. We kind of sold out, showed some blitzes we hadn't showed all year, and now it's all on tape. So I think Bridgewater is the better matchup here. I don't find any of them too exciting, but Bridgewater, to me, does have some weapons. He started getting Cordarrelle Patterson going last week. He's got McKinnon to help that offense move. And I think his defense, most importantly, the Vikings' defense, will put him on the field a lot by getting the Redskins in off the field a lot on the other side of the ball. So, yeah, I'm rolling with Bridgewater. You see it differently, Matt?
No, I think I would still go with Bridgewater, but the one caveat is, that offensive line is pretty bad, and it's kind of single-handedly wrecked a few of Bridgewater's games. I love Teddy, and I love what he can do for this offense. So I'm gonna roll with him, though. If you want to play Whedon over him, I don't hate it, but I still like Bridgewater enough that I'm gonna go with him over Whedon at this point. So just one man's opinion. We have a few more questions in the hashtag so if you use the hashtag, I think we'll get to those at the end of this show, because I kind of want to start getting into these matchups. So we've got a few of them in the hashtag on the show. So we'll get to those at the end, and we'll go through matchups, and we'll circle back to questions. How does that sound, Dan?
Yeah, I think that makes the most sense.
Okay, all right, sounds good. So why don't you kick it off with one of your games first, while I'm trying to compose myself over here.
Yeah, just for those who don't know, Matt is dying of Ebola over there, so through the screen. I'm just kidding, but he does seem a little sick this week, so hopefully he feels better. But we'll start this one off with Cardinals-Cowboys, and as I mentioned earlier when breaking down Whedon, I don't think this game is going to flow as much as to the point where everyone else does. I don't think the Cowboys are going to be controlling the clock like they normally do. I think the Cardinals are going to end up getting a win in this one, and I think that they're going to be the team that gets off the most offensive plays in this one. So I really like rolling with Palmer here, Michael Floyd, Larry Fitzgerald, and my key matchup here that I want to touch on is Andre Ellington. The real way to attack this Cowboys defense has been by running at them. Even last week, you'll notice that Alfred Morris was able to get going on them, and Morris hasn't really been able to get going on anyone all season. So I think that Andre Ellington is going to have a really good opportunity in this one to put up a really good fantasy game, and I've got him rolling through in a lot of my DFSs this week. And let's just keep in mind that while they've been really good at blitzing some of these pickups the Cowboys have made, guys like Henry Melton and Jeremy Mincey haven't been really good against the run. They've been a liability. They keep getting beat at the line. Only 4 defensive ends have graded out worse against the run this season than starting defensive end for the Cowboys, Jeremy Mincey, and that's according to Pro Football Focus. And overall, they grade out as the 6th worst run defense on Pro Football Focus, and that's the Cowboys. So this is really a good matchup for the Cardinals, and in general, but offense in general, but I think Ellington's the really key play here. And on the other side of the ball with the Cowboys, I'm just not convinced that Whedon is an NFL quarterback. I understand he's been okay, especially for the Cowboys, in his limited snaps on the field, and some of them that we're considering are preseason snaps. I don't know why we're considering, Whedon was great in preseason. Okay, well, I don't know what that means.
We fell for that trap last year.
Yeah, exactly.
Same thing.
The same exact thing with Whedon that we fell for last season. What made him a popular QB2 play in North Turner's system. But anyway, I'm not going to buy into it again. Yes, the Cowboys have an incredible offensive line, and that's great, but so did the Browns last season. Let's remember that for Whedon last season. So the offensive line is not going to make Brandon Whedon a real NFL quarterback, and that's, to me, is the reason I downgrade all Cowboys in this matchup. You obviously can't sit Murray or Dez, but I don't think this is a matchup that you want to be rolling Terrence Williams out, and I would put him on your benches. And don't get swayed by Jason Witten's touchdown and random good game last week. This is a guy who's had like 2 and 3 points over the past 4 weeks before Week 8. He's no longer creates much separation, and he offers next to nothing after the catch. So I would bench him and Williams for sure in this one. Do you see this matchup any differently, Matt?
Yeah, let me start on the Cowboys side. I never thought I would utter this sentence, but I think I'm a little higher on Brandon Whedon than you are. I already feel like I need to wash my hands after saying that. But anyways, Whedon, I think, honestly, like, he's not the worst backup quarterback in the NFL. Like, I mean, we saw Charlie Whitehurst come out and keep the offense, like, decently on schedule. which is disgusting. Which is disgusting. So I think I think Whedon is better than that. And like, while I don't think he's going to have a great game himself, I think he's good enough to keep the offense kind of on schedule, like I said. And what we love about backup quarterbacks like Whedon, when they get in the game, you mentioned this earlier, and this is a really good and important point, he locks on to that number one receiver. Like, he did it with Jordan Cameron earlier in the year for the Browns, and then when Gordon was in there, he did it with Gordon. And while that's not good for real-life NFL football, for fantasy football, that means and that means good things for Dez. And I already was playing Dez everywhere, with the assumption that Tony Romo was going to play. Whedon being in there doesn't really change it for me. This is a great matchup for him. The Cardinals, on DraftKings, the Cardinals have allowed the most fantasy points to wide receivers. And we even saw it when Whedon got into the game briefly last Monday night. I mean, on both of those, in the red zone, on both the looks, he went right to Dez, looked right over to that side of the field. So that's who he is. He's going to pepper Dez with targets, and we love that as fantasy owners, because we're always, people are always on Twitter complaining about, why don't they throw it more to this guy? Why don't they throw it more to that guy? Well, Whedon is going to throw it to Dez. He's going to, just pepper Dez with targets, and so I'm not concerned about him. I think you're right. I mean, I'm not playing Jason Witten because I don't play declining old players on my fantasy teams. And Terrence Williams, yeah, he's really more of a desperation play this week. Like we said, Whedon's going to be looking for Dez. So I think he's good enough to keep Dez as a top, 5, top 3 fantasy play this week. But yeah, so I don't know about his own standalone value. And as for the Cardinals, Michael Floyd, I'm going back to him. He's 3,800 on DraftKings, which is just like insanely cheap. Wow. So you have to kind of put him back. Yeah, I mean, we'll talk more about that, I'm sure, with TJ. So, it's too cheap to pass up. I still think he's the best receiver on the roster there. There was a rough game last week, and like I said, I detailed it all in the article if you want to read that. And I think this is a game that it can be another one of those high scoring back and forth games. So you want to get your Cardinals in there, Carson Palmer, and Andre Ellington, all those guys. You want to get those players in your lineup. So I like this game for fantasy football a lot. And we'll go on to our next game. We'll go right into Denver and New England, which, as we mentioned, is kind of being thrown off a little bit because of the snow, the windy conditions up in Foxborough. It is that time of year again, like I said. And the good thing, though, is that this should be a really good game for Ronnie Hillman. And honestly, out of all the Denver players, I think I might be most excited about Hillman. The Patriots have given up a lot of ground to running backs. Especially running backs in the passing game. They've allowed 45 receptions, 5 touchdowns to running backs that catch the ball out of the backfield. And Hillman is pretty good as a receiver. He's good out in space. I wasn't that high on Hillman when he got into the lineup after Ball, got hurt. But he's the man there right now. I think he's clearly the best back on the roster. He's way better than Monte Ball was. Hillman's showing a lot as an NFL running back, so I think he can, especially if this game's going to be windy and blizzardy conditions. I think that Peyton could look to dump the ball off to Hillman, get him on those screens. So and that seems to be a good matchup against the Patriots. So I have high expectations, like a top 10 sort of week for Hillman in this game. As for the passing game, Julius Thomas, I think he's going to get his in the red zone. I'm still high on him despite kind of 2 down weeks. He's another one that's pretty cheap on DraftKings. All tight ends are outside of Gronk. All tight ends are pretty cheap on DraftKings this week. So there's good value with Thomas. I'm not crazy about Emmanuel Sanders just because he's kind of the downfield guy and all that sort of stuff. And I think he's going to come back to earth a little bit after 3 touchdowns. Demaryius Thomas, I'm still thinking is fine. It's short screen games. I mean, I know it sounds like I'm talking a lot about the weather, but my point is that all these Denver guys are still safe plays. And on the New England side, I'm I know I'm a bit of a jaded Panthers follower, so I'm not crazy about Brandon LaFell. I expect him to kind of come back to earth, though it does look like he's the top wide receiver on that team right now. So good for him, kind of getting his career on track. That's nice to see. Edelman's not really a factor for me anymore, even in PPR leagues. I mean, he's seems to be kind of falling out of favor there, and LaFell's getting the boost. So in a game like this, I'm not going to roll Edelman out there. It's really all about Brady and Gronk for me, and those guys have just been on fire, especially Gronk. Like he's Gronk now. You know, he's back and he's better than ever. I mean, I love it. I love Gronkowski. I took him all over the place, sometimes even in the first round, and this is why you took him in the first round for those like 3 touchdown weeks. I think it could be another game like that. So outside of that, I mean, the Patriots' offense is pretty simple to me. LaFell, you can play him as a wide receiver 3 if you need to, and then it's just all Brady and Gronk. Jonas Gray is an interesting guy to watch, especially if it gets into bad conditions, bad weather. He's kind of there grinding out back right now. I'm not really all that excited about Shane Vereen anymore, so it's really just the Brady and Gronk show with a little bit of LaFell sprinkled in there. What do you think about this game, Dan?
Yeah, I think you broke it down in depth, and I'm in agreement on most things. I would say this. I don't think that the Patriots will have success if they try to make it a grinded-out Jonas Gray game. This Broncos run defense is really flying to the ball, and they've really been winning at the point of attack all season long. And I think that they're playing their best football in these last few weeks, so I don't think that strategy will necessarily work for the Patriots. Moving on, I like the call you make with it's kind of the Brady, Gronk, and LaFell show. That's why I really was low on Edelman heading into last week. I've noticed this since Gronk has started to get healthy, and I wouldn't play Edelman this week, and I would still be looking to trade him, as I think I mentioned on one of my shows, my podcast last week. He's a guy you want to start to look to trade. Before it's too late, trade him with his name value, trade him away. I mean, granted, he's a very good and reliable receiver for them, but that hasn't been the case over the last 3 weeks or so. He's been dropping a lot of passes, and that's kind of uncharacteristic of him. He's talked about it and then how he's going to improve on it, but listen, if he's dropping passes, he's no longer even the option in their real-life passing game that they're hoping for, let alone his fantasy value tanking. So he's not a touchdown guy. I would start to look to trade him, and I would bench him this week. I mean, again, I think that this Broncos run defense is really playing too well for Gray to have a great game. On the other side of the ball, I think your Hillman call's great. He has so much upside this week. It's really unbelievable. The Patriots are likely to come up with some kind of strategy to stop Peyton Manning that's going to be unique and something we haven't seen, because that's what Bill Belichick does, and it's likely going to be kind of similar to how he defended the Giants in the 2011 Super Bowl. He said, this is still a Hakeem Nicks and Victor Cruz game. Let's take those 2 guys out first, and I think he'll do that kind of thing with Demaryius Thomas and potentially Emmanuel Sanders, the way he's been playing lately. And that's why I think Julius Thomas will get his looks over the middle and just throughout the court and just all over the defense. And I think the same thing for Ronnie Hillman. Those are my 2 favorite plays this week. And that's really what Matt said as well. So I think we're kind of in agreement on this Broncos-Patriots game, Matt.
Yeah, it's going to be a great game. I mean, as much as the football world loves to jump on these Manning-Brady games, they usually are really good, really intense football games. So it's one I'm going to really enjoy watching. Why don't you go right ahead into your next game, Dan?
All right, so the next one we're going to take a look at is the Texans and Eagles. This is Eagles at Texans, which I think makes a big difference in this one. The Texans have been a much better team at home, and especially their defense has been much better at home. They can really get behind that crowd, and as long as they don't fall behind early, they're really kind of a heavy pass rush type team, and a team that really excels at rushing the passer while at home. Jadeveon Clowney won't be in this game. He has some kind of illness that's really been bothering the team because they don't understand why he never plays anymore for them. It's one excuse after another for him. But at the same time, their pass rush has been really good without him. J.J. Watt is a one-man show. He's the best defensive player in football. I think at this point, finally, everyone is almost in agreement on that one. And he makes disruptive plays every game. And he'll be going up against Lane Johnson for the most part. And right guard Todd Harriman, who's playing through an injury right now. I think he was the one with the broken hand, and he was practicing through it this week, and he claims he's going to play through that. That's an incredible injury to try to play through, especially when your first matchup pins you, in some cases, against J.J. Watt, when he kind of makes an inside move and just blows right through. I think he'll be blowing right through. So I think the Texans are actually going to have a chance to pull a major upset in this game, and I think that's going to affect the game flow of the entire thing. The Eagles' offense got off a disgusting amount of plays last week. I don't know if you saw this, Matt, but they got off like 90 offensive plays. I think it was 90 or 91. That was insane. I looked at that box score. I was like, holy shit. 19 offensive plays in a game. I don't think that'll be the case this week. I think the Texans offense will move the ball a lot better. I really like Ryan Fitzpatrick as a throw it all out there, go for it, Hail Mary type um, a daily play in tournaments, and I like his receivers as well. I like both Hopkins and Andre. Andre's had gotten more targets, and he's probably the safer play, especially for cash games, but Hopkins makes some more of the big plays, and he's cheaper on both sites. So, all right, he's actually the same price on Kings, I think, but I think Hopkins is kind of the stack I'd go with in tournaments, the Fitzpatrick-Hopkins stack. Foster's a play who he's going against a tough Eagles defense, but at this point he's unbenchable. He's too good of a running back. Nobody runs with the acceleration and smooth running style that he displays every week. He's a treat to watch, I think, Foster. He's one of my favorite players to watch. He's a unique runner in that sense. So I wouldn't bench him. And on the other side of the ball, it's too hard to bench your Eagles, even though they might fall behind or they might have a tough time with this Texans pass rush. They're really a high-powered offense that gets off a ton of plays. But I'm just not expecting huge weeks out of any of the Eagles besides maybe Macklin because he can get over the top of the defense. Do you see it any differently, Matt?
Well, I think that you did a really good job breaking down this game. Start on the Eagles side first. LaShawn McCoy, I think we've seen a little bit of regression from him as a player and his situation both this year. I do think the offensive line coming back together is good, but on DraftKings, he's 5,200. Like, he's really cheap for a guy that you know is going to get a ton of workload. I mean, that's insane. He's one that we can definitely say is a really safe play for that price. I mean, come on, like, that's crazy. So he's in a lot of my lineups, even though this Texas front seven is really good. For that price, it's just too good to turn down. Yeah, your Eagles passing game, honestly, right now, I think it's pretty much just the Macklin show. And Foles, I definitely think he's kind of turned back into a pumpkin a little bit, but he throws the ball so much. It's such a good passing system that you can roll with Foles as a fantasy quarterback, even though we're kind of seeing it as an NFL quarterback. He's got a lot of flaws. And Macklin just gets a ton of targets, and he's going to have big weeks like he did against the Cardinals last time out. I'm not really interested in playing Zach Ertz at this point or any of those other receivers unless I'm desperate. The Texans, I love Andre Johnson this week and DeAndre Hopkins. Those outside cornerbacks for the Eagles are so bad, despite the fact that they shut down Michael Floyd last week. But I think that had a lot to do with extraneous factors. So I love both of those guys this week. I don't really think that intersects back to me liking Ryan Fitzpatrick, but I might be biased because I think he's just a wretched quarterback. But other than he's got a sweet beard that I'm jealous of.
I called it a Hail Mary play. I don't love him either.
Yeah.
From a talent standpoint, but he's just got a good matchup and a good situation, I think.
No, yeah, and honestly, that's if you want to stream Fitzpatrick, I think there's some viability in that strategy. So I mean, yeah, I agree. With you saying it's a Hail Mary play that could certainly pay off. We have seen him definitely have some nice fantasy games, and the good part about Fitzpatrick is that he is decent enough as a backup quarterback to make those around him do well, which is why we like Johnson and Hopkins this week. And yeah, Foster is amazing. He's a stud. He's super expensive on DraftKings, but if you swing the right lineup you can get a pretty good you can get a pretty decent cheap lineup around there and get Foster in there, and I think that's a good strategy. So that's all we have for this game. We want to do one more here, Dan. Did you want to do 49ers and Rams or another one? Your choice.
We can roll with 49ers Rams.
Okay, sure. And I'll kick this one off, and I'll kind of get into something that I've been talking a lot about this week, and I want to get TJ's take on this as soon as we get him on here. It's Colin Kaepernick versus the Rams. Kaepernick tore up the Rams last time we were out there. He hasn't been as good, which is weird. I mean, they're in a new stadium, but it's so odd that he hasn't been as good at home as he has on the road. But I still expect Kaepernick the Rams have just been terrible against defending quarterbacks. So I think Kaepernick is someone that's going to be in a lot. He's pretty cheap on DFS sites, both FanDuel and DraftKings. So he's someone that's going to be in a lot of my cash game lineups, and I'd like to play him in tournaments, but the problem is I just have no idea who to stack him with this receiver core. They're just kind of all canceling each other out. Crabtree has not delivered on his promise. You mentioned it with Clowney that there seems to just be one issue after another with Crabtree. Vernon Davis, he hasn't been right for most of this year, so there's no one from this passing game that I'm really all that interested in playing, unless, of course, you're desperate. I don't really want to stack Kaepernick with any of those guys, which is why I'm hesitating to put him into tournaments in DFS. And then for the running game, though, I mean, and this is the one caveat with Kaepernick, is that this game could get out of hand quickly. And so those running backs should have a decent day. I'm excited about Frank Gore this week. Carlos Hyde could even get some action in there if it turns into a big blowout. The Rams are just kind of sinking right now. With Austin Davis, he didn't play well under pressure against the Chiefs. Without Brian Quick, who was having a nice season, taking away a lot of coverage, I think that hurts the whole passing game, not having him in there. It doesn't make me excited about Kenny Britt or anything, or Tavon Austin, God knows. We'll see. And as for the Rams running back situation, we thought we were gonna have some clarity with Trey Mason being the lead guy, but that doesn't look like it's gonna happen. It looks like they're gonna kind of go with some weird committee where they cancel each other out. So there's no one honestly on this Rams offense that I'm all that interested in playing. It's mostly just about Kaepernick in this matchup for me, and I'm kind of and Frank Gore, and I'm kind of really avoiding everybody else. What do you think, Dan? Any difference of opinion there?
I mean, I think this Rams offense is torpedoing. Not only did you mention injury to Brian Quick's going to really hurt them because he drew a lot of coverage and he took away a lot of the defense. He took away an extra defensive back on every play. But the fact of the matter is they also lost left tackle Jake Long now for the season, and even more importantly, right guard Roger Saffold, who's been one of their best offensive linemen over the last few years. He's been their second best offensive lineman according to Pro Football Focus this year. He's also out for an extended period of time. This is an offense I'd want to sell as fast as I can if you have any asset in it, and do it quick if you can get anything for him, especially Trey Mason, who may still have name value. I mentioned this last week on Everywhere I Could, but Trey Mason was not a guy I was buying on. He was still a game flow guy to me. He's not trusted yet in pass protection. He's not trusted to play on too many snaps then because they use Benny Cunningham as their pass down guy, and whenever they fall behind. So really with Trey Mason, you're hoping that the Rams can have a game like they had against the Seahawks 2 weeks ago where they have a lead for most of the time or they're in the game back and forth one possession. And how many games do I expect that to happen for the remainder of their season? I would say 1 to 3 at max. They're not a good football team. They're not even that good on defense. So I really think I would get rid of my Rams. Don't even consider playing them. On the other side of the ball, I'm like you. I like Colin Kaepernick a lot this week. I actually kind of like Anquan Bolden because I think we'll see less of E.J. Gaines, the Rams' best cornerback. And the Rams have really struggled to defend whoever he hasn't been guarding. So I think he'll kind of have the better matchup, Bolden. But Stevie Johnson will work in, and that's kind of a difficult. And same with Vernon Davis, a little healthier. It's difficult to kind of target a guy there for your DFS tournaments. But again, Frank Gore could have a big week. It's very unlikely. His touchdown total is set to it should regress over the last half of the season in the opposite direction. He's had one rushing touchdown in the first half. That should even out more towards the mean, and he should have 3 to 5 the second half, in my opinion. It's a little bit of bad luck that he hasn't had more. So I think that he's a good play, and he could get going on the touchdowns this week.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I think we agree on a lot of places there. And we're going to seamlessly transition right into TJ. TJ Hernandez is on with us right now to talk daily fantasy, and I want to welcome you to TJ to Hot Takes and Hot Cakes, the Matt Harmon has a cold on air edition. It's been a real treat to watch me duck out and blow my nose every 5 seconds. It's great. It's great entertainment. Anyways, I wanna get your well, actually now I want to ask you: are you wearing a Raiders hoodie?
I am wearing. Yeah, I mean, I'm a Raiders fan still.
I didn't know that about you.
Born and raised, yeah.
No idea.
I was born in the East Bay, grew up there. I've been in San Diego for 11 years, but I grew up in Northern California. So it's been yeah, it's been a lot of pain. It's been years and years of pain. But if there's one thing to sell DFS, if you if you have a team that's bad and you start playing DFS, a lot of your fan loyalty will go out the window really quick.
Yeah.
So become a full-time daily player, and you won't care so much about your team. Also,
Okay.
like 10 straight seasons of them being really bad makes you a little numb too. So
Now I'm really off the rails on this whole. I had a good question set up for you right to start this off, but now I see you put in your header that you're Matt's man crush. What does that
Matt's
say?
Matt's biggest man crush.
Well,
That's
it's a fact. I can't
At this
believe
point,
TJ
I'm just
hasn't.
gonna embrace it.
Yeah, I mean, that's all you can do because it's not going away. But yeah, definitely, TJ is a handsome fella. So all the
Great.
ladies out there in California, and you should be trying to get on those digits. But anyways, I'm sorry. We're gonna focus now off this Raiders stuff and off how attractive I think TJ is. Um,
Great.
luckily, my girlfriend doesn't watch this show, so she has no idea.
Awesome.
Yeah, she would never even want any interest in watching anything related. But all right, back on track. I had a great question for you. So we just talked about this whole Rams 49ers game, and one thing I've been kind of throwing back and forth in my head is, I love Colin Kaepernick this week, but I've been tending to put it more in cash game lineups than tournament lineups because there's no obvious stacking candidate. I mentioned that earlier in the breakdown. What's your feeling on that, or is that just me being an idiot? I don't know. So you take
No,
it.
you bring up a few interesting points there. I really like Cap. He's my top cash game play across both sites just because of his price in the matchup. So I have him in 50% of my cash game lineups this week. As far as tournament goes, there's a couple things to that. If you're playing limited tournament lineups, this is something I've kind of been going back and forth with all year. Is do you want to say you're playing 10 tournament lineups a week? Do you want to pick 2 or 3 stacks that you're going to build around and kind of mix and match, or do you want to build 7 or 8 different stacks and just kind of have a core running back and core wide receiver guys that you're going to build different stacks around. So that's something I've kind of been playing with. The last couple weeks, I've just been kind of throwing 7 or 8 different stacks out there and kind of sticking to a core group of running backs and receivers around those guys. So in that situation, yeah, you can definitely get a Colin Kaepernick stack out there. They don't generally like light it up. Even if he has a good game, it's usually because he has a pretty good game on the ground as well. And like you said, there's no clear player to stack him with because there are those games where Vernon Davis will have his game or Crabtree or Bolden. We've even seen Stevie Johnson get in the mix a little bit, scoring touchdowns before the bye week. But if it's a situation like that, what I tend to do is play the most expensive guy, just because I think that'll give you the most contrarian play, I guess, because like we've seen a lot of times this year, Crabtree and Bolden will be pretty similarly priced. So from what I've seen, so I'll just take the more expensive guy. Just because I think most people will go for the quote-unquote value, but when prices are relatively close, take the kind of contrarian approach, I guess, in a GPP and take the more expensive guy, if that makes sense. Does
Yeah.
that answer your question a little bit, Matt?
Yeah, sorry, I just got a really interesting email about someone posted in one of my league message boards, and they posted like the stupidest whining complaint I've ever heard. But anyway, so yeah, sorry, I got a little distracted there. But yeah, that's a lot of what I was thinking, and you had some really good thoughts there about the most expensive player and all that. So definitely, I enjoy your take on that. So like we always do, floor is yours. Whatever you have to get off your chest about.
Yeah.
DFS, and we'll Dan and I will jump in as we have thoughts.
Cool, cool. Luckily last week, for anyone that listens and uses my suggestions, I missed the hangout and I had my worst week of the year, so my picks didn't work out too well. But it brings up some really interesting points of bankroll and diversification. Uh, I'm I'm of the school of thought that you should play multiple cash game lineups, that you should be diversifying your players. I tend to play two cash game lineups on each site, um, and just because I don't think I'm good enough to peg exactly who the best play is each week, and there's usually quite a few guys I want exposure to, and also the NFL season's so short. We only have 16 weeks, 17 if you play every week. So the variance in NFL is so high and the season's so short that it's not like NBA or MLB where you can roll out a single lineup every day, and if it doesn't hit, you're going to be able to make up for it. Um, as far as a expected value standpoint, it probably is maximum EV over the long term to play what you think is the most optimal lineup if you think you have a good formula. But we generally don't have time to recognize that EV in the NFL season. So I roll out multiple lineups each week, and then I mean again, bankroll management. Um, depending on what types of games you play, and your mix of cash games, tournaments, you really shouldn't be playing about between 10 to 20% really aggressive bankroll management. If you're playing really heavy cash game lineups and diversifying well, you could probably get away with playing 20% of your bankroll each week. But I mean, like last week, like I said, I had a really bad week, and luckily I diversified my players enough where um, I didn't lose every game. But one bad week in DFS is it's going to take, if you're sticking to your bankroll management and sticking to that percentage you're playing each week, it's going to take 3 or 4 weeks to recoup those losses if you don't have a big GPP score, or if you don't just crush it across the board. So those are just some general thoughts and hopefully some things people are sticking to so they don't have to go depositing too much. And just kind of on the thoughts of diversification this week. Obviously, one of the most popular plays this week is going to be Jeremy Hill against the Jaguars, and I have him paired up with all my quarterbacks across all sites, just because I want exposure to him in every lineup. But that being said, I generally try not to play more than one player in more than 70% of my cash games. So what I did this week is, rather than playing two lineups on each site, this week I ended up just with two quarterbacks on each site, which is generally I end up with two quarterbacks on each side. I wanted to pair Jeremy Hill with all my quarterback plays this week. So rather than just playing two lineups on each side, I ended up playing four lineups on each side. And what that did is it gave me a lineup with each quarterback with Jeremy Hill, without Jeremy Hill, and it brought my exposure down to about 60%, all my cash games. So if he does have a bad game, then I hedge a little bit there. Um, so
Okay.
so so that's something you can do, a little trick. If you really like a player and you want exposure to him in all your lineups, then just add a lineup or two without him. And that'll bring down your exposure to him a little bit. Um,
And you mentioned Jeremy Hill is a good. I think that's a great point as a good play that everybody kind of wants to get going in their daily. But do you see that you can kind of You can kind of make a little substitution, I would say, and put in Bobby Rainey for that now. Now that we know that Doug Martin's out and Charles Sims is inactive, do you see a similar output from Rainey? Obviously, it's a different situation. He's not on as good of an offense, but he's facing the Browns' run defense that hasn't been good all season. And I think he's probably in that same cheap range. Do you see him as a play, TJ, that people can get going right now in their cash and daily games?
yeah, like you said, the matchup is good. It's not as glaring as that Jaguars game. I think
Right.
I think they're favored. Cincinnati's favored by 12. So if you just kind of wanted to get into some game script talk and whatnot, then it could be a really favorable situation. Adjusted for strength of schedule, Jaguars are the worst team. Or 30th. I don't have it right in front of me. They're down there against running backs. Cleveland's not quite as bad. So in my cash games, I'm probably not rolling Rainey out there just because just that Tampa Bay offense has been bad.
Yeah.
And I don't know exactly what his usage will be today. I think they're pretty big underdogs as well. Um,
Yep. The game flow is
so
definitely not there. I can see that.
so I do like that call as a GPP play,
Right.
just because they are similar price points, and the majority of owners are going to go that Jeremy Hill way, even in GPPs. When the price point's that close, and you can get that edge in ownership percentage, I think you definitely gonna have to do that. I'm not playing Jeremy Hill in any of my GPPs this week, just because he's going to have such a high percentage owned. Um, Something interesting that happened this week. I don't know if you guys saw this. FanDuel took away the ability to see percentage owned in your Thursday games, which is something that has been a talking point on the site for a really long time. If you play Thursday GPPs, you're able to see the ownership percentage of all players before the game starts. So if you didn't have Thursday guys, you can see that Jeremy Hill's 40% owned or whatever. FanDuel took that away this week, so that's something really interesting that happened. It was a strategy that a lot of people use. You can kind of look at the Thursday GPPs and get an idea of who's going to be uh, heavily owned or who you can kind of play to go against the grain. Um, I think a lot of the better players, more the pros like this better. A lot of people look at these guys' lineups and kind of steal plays. So that's something interesting. It's going to be a lot more of an art form now to kind of gauge who's going to be heavily owned and who's going to be under owned. But yeah, that's something you could do. Obviously, Hill's that glaring matchup, so you can get that contrarian play by playing someone like Rainey. Um, just kind of going down some quick matchup stuff. Not hitting on specific prices too much. You guys were talking Brandon Whedon a little bit. Um, I think we got a question on Twitter if he's a GPP play today. Uh, Brandon Whedon's been like a really inefficient quarterback since he's came in the league. His his completion percentage is right around the 60% mark. I think a little bit lower. Last year, I think he only had one game over 61% completion percentage, one game at 63%, and his touchdown rate was one every 31 attempts, which is relatively low. One thing I would say about Brandon Whedon, if you kind of look to the Browns offense last year, it was all Josh Gordon and Jordan Cameron. So while Whedon was pretty bad, we all remember what Josh Gordon did. He's just gonna kind of focus in on the number one target and just throw it up to him. So I don't have a problem rolling out Dez in cash games or GPPs. Arizona is they're adjusted for strength of schedule. They're the second worst team in the league against wide receivers. I've harped on that fantasy outsiders opponents versus types of wide receivers. They've given up the most yards in the league to number one wide receivers at 100 yards a game. So I'm still rolling out Dez in cash games if you could fit him in. He's pretty expensive, but with there's quite a few running back values this week, so you could probably squeeze him into some lineups. And GPPs, I think a lot of people are going to be off him now that Whedon's in there. So he makes a nice contrarian play. Anytime you can get an elite talent that's gonna be under-owned, someone like Dez can blow up regardless of who's throwing them the ball. One thing I've always really enjoyed in fantasy is playing that elite wide receiver with a bad quarterback, because elite wide receivers are just they're gonna have their games regardless of who's throwing them the ball. Uh, Sticking on some kind of GPP stacks, I think AJ Green's back, so I like an AJ Green, Andy Dalton stack. Um, he's coming off the injury, so a lot of people are going to be are going to be avoiding him. But if you look at the Vegas lines, they're projected for almost 28 points. Again, they're favored by 12. He's an elite wide receiver. If he's playing, then roll him out there. A lot of people are going to be off him. I wouldn't play him in cash games, but throw him out there for that contrarian GPP play. And one other really interesting stack that I'm looking at this week that I might try to squeeze in there real quick if I can is uh, Alex Smith. There's not really a receiver to pair Alex Smith with. I see Matt clapping. I guess Matt, you were hoping I'd bring up some Alex Smith talk.
Yes, I was hoping that you were going to do that, and Dwayne Bowe.
See, I don't know if I'm to roll Dwayne Bowe. I'm gonna go kind of really off the board in here and do something that people generally don't do and pair him with his running back. Um, you know if Smith goes nuclear and has a 4 touchdown game, there's a good chance that 2 of those are passes to Jamal and Jamal rushes another one in. We saw it versus Oakland last year in week 15. Obviously, we can't expect that, but um, that Jets secondary's been really really poor this year. Let me bring up let me see if I could find it real quick. Um, they are they're 30th against quarterbacks and when adjusted for strength of schedule. Kansas City's favored by almost 10 points. I don't know if that line has moved, but I'm sure it's still right around 10 points. They're projected to score 26 points this week, and I believe the Jets lost one of their starting corners this week. Is that correct?
Darren Walls, but he's been pretty miserable anyway. But yeah, he'll be out.
He's been miserable, but I mean, he's someone that is bad enough to back him up is going to be playing.
Right.
I think they pulled up a guy off the practice squad, so that's one
They
of
have
those.
some converted receiver playing there too.
Oh.
Yes, so that's one of those situations where they're going to have an even worse corner than him. So they'll probably be rolling some safety coverage over. I know I promised we'd talk about the wind. So that game is supposed to have gusts up to 34 miles per hour. So I don't know. They don't push the ball downfield much anyway with Alex Smith. So a lot of people might be looking at Travis Kelce, but I don't know how much the wind will affect any deep passing they might do. And we know Jamal Charles is a great receiver, so he could run all the routes. And if they're pulling a safety off to help to help the corners, we can see a lot of open field in the middle, and that's a great matchup. Alex Smith didn't capitalize on a great matchup against the Rams last week, but he was really efficient. I think he completed 24 of 28 passes for about 230 yards. I don't remember the exact yardage, and he's always going to add a couple yards on the ground. So if you kind of want to go off the board and do something that people aren't going to do and make a really contrarian lineup, pair Alex Smith with Jamal. A lot of people are going to look to pair him with a receiver, maybe Travis Kelce. Travis Kelce just hasn't. I mean, we saw him had that big game against the Patriots, but he's just not getting the usage that you'd like out of someone you're going to roll out there. So Jamal's going to catch the ball, so why not roll him out there? And I kind of been touching on the Vegas lines. And we were talking about the weather in that Patriots Denver game. The line hasn't moved that much in that game. It's opened at 55, I think. I think it's down to 53.5, so it's still projected to be really high scoring. I think it is going to affect the deep passing. So you touched on LaFell a little bit, Matt. I wouldn't be rolling LaFell out in any lineups really at all this week, just because I don't know how that's going to affect the deep passing. I took Gronk and Julius out of my cash game lineups just because of the weather and the wind, and I know last 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, the wind in the DC area I harped on, and it kind of backfired. Garcon had a big game, and Torrey Smith ended up with a pretty good game, but they're both kind of fluky plays. Garcon's was on a screen that went for 70 yards, and then Torrey Smith, his was just kind of on a deep ball, that kind of a jump ball towards the end of the game. But I think he only ended up with 3 catches that game. Mm-hmm. So I'm still going to kind of avoid the passing game a little bit if I can. In dailies, all those guys are expensive anyway, especially on the Broncos side. So I really like Ronnie Hillman a little bit more. Shane Vereen on DraftKings just because he's going to catch the ball. I'll still roll out, Tom Brady, Gronk stack in GPPs. I'll still roll out Peyton with whoever I can in GPPs. But there's really no point to pay up for them in cash games with good values in other spots. Um, so I think, I mean, one of the best DFS minds around is Jonathan Bales, and he's done. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but when wind gusts get over 25 miles per hour, there really is a sharp decline in passing efficiency, and I mean that's a study that covers the whole league. Obviously, guys like Tom Brady and Peyton Manning are kind of outliers compared to the rest of the league, but it definitely has an effect, especially when you're trying to push that ball downfield a little bit. So I'm avoiding those guys, Gronk and Julius Thomas in cash games, especially Thomas because he's been so touchdown dependent this year, and there's just not much reason to pay up for him, even though he's a little bit cheaper on DraftKings. Um, but it's full PPR, so you really want to value those catches on DraftKings. So I'm kind of saving them for my GPPs there.
Yeah, it's
But
burning questions on everyone's mind right now with the weather.
Yeah, so I mean it's a thing, but I mean I guess it's kind of up to you how you want to attack that. Um, those are just some general thoughts on the games. Let me just kind of try to hit on a couple prices over on DraftKings that really stuck out to me this week. Um, uh, all the top wide receivers on DraftKings are always in play just because it's full PPR. So I'm kind of always saving a little room to get some top wide receivers in there if I can, especially a guy like Antonio Brown. He's 9,100 this week on DraftKings, which it's pretty expensive, but with like I've been saying, there are a lot of running back values this week, so you could probably fit him in there. Baltimore is 24th against wide receivers when adjusted for strength of schedule, and they're towards the bottom of the league against number one wide receivers. Andre Johnson at 5,500 on DraftKings. He and DeAndre Hopkins are priced really similarly. I'd still rather play Andre in my cash games just because he gets more targets. He's a lot bigger market share, a lot bigger red zone share. And then DeAndre Hopkins, I'll throw in my GPPs. They're both really good plays. Philly's been really bad against wide receivers. Just their whole secondary's been bad. Doug Baldwin, again, the whole offense, really, Seattle's offense. I'm rolling out Marshawn in a lot of my cash games, especially on FanDuel. I have Baldwin. I wasn't able to fit Baldwin into my cash games this week just because I'm rolling out Russell Wilson as my second quarterback this week, and in lineups I don't have Russell Wilson. I probably have Marshawn in there. So in your cash games, you generally want to avoid stacking players just because theoretically lowers your floor. But I said it when Percy Harvin got traded, I jumped on the old Twitter machine so I can try to I called it in there and said Doug Baldwin's a top 20 PPR wide receiver for the rest of the season. And he's performed well in his first two games without Percy Harvin, especially that first game. I think even last week he had 6 for 61, I think. Again, Seahawks are at home favored by a monster number, 16 points. Raiders are bad, pretty bad team all around, especially on defense. Not as bad against the passing game as they are against the run game, but again, I think that's just kind of a function of they're so easy to run on that, and teams have had such big leads that they haven't had to throw against them. But I think Seattle definitely builds a lead with a combination of Russell Wilson and Marshawn Lynch. Andrew Hawkins all the way across the board this week is a really great value with Jordan Cameron out. He has 9 targets in every game except for one this year, and I think it bumps up to an average of 10 in the games Jordan Cameron's been out. Tampa Bay's the worst in the league against wide receivers when adjusted for strength of schedule. They're second worst team against number one wide receivers. Andrew Hawkins is going to be the clear number one play this week, the clear number one receiver this week for Cleveland. He's only $4,900 on DraftKings, and again, you want to favor that full PPR. And I think he's going to give you a nice little advantage and clear up a lot of space to throw in some. If you could pair him with Antonio Brown, just because of the difference in their price, he's so cheap, and you want to get Brown in there as an expensive guy. Um, you could reasonably lock up 10 to 15 catches between those two guys. Some running back plays. Again, I touched on Marshawn Lynch. He's only 6,100 on DraftKings. He'll catch one or two balls. He's not your ideal PPR guy, but I think it's gonna be a lot of beast mode this week with a big lead. Um, all the top running backs are always in play. Le'Veon's only 7,000 this week. Matchup isn't outstanding, but he's just going to get so many touches that he's always a cash game play. Same with Jamal. He's only $7,100 this week. I touched on him stacking with Alex Smith, but at 7,100, 10-point favorites. I really like him this week. Andre Ellington's he's underpriced across the industry. He's only 5,900 on DraftKings. I think he is 7,700 on FanDuel. A lot of running back values on DraftKings. Lamar Miller at 5,600. LaShawn McCoy at 5,200. Obviously, we touched on Jeremy Hill. I'm playing him as much as I can without that 100% ownership, which I try to avoid. But if you're just rolling out one or two cash game lineups, I think Jeremy Hill's the most obvious play of the week this week. Tight end Larry Donnell or Donnell, he's only 4,600 on DraftKings. Indianapolis is bottom 5 in the league against tight ends. We saw Donnell. He's recovered from a couple bad weeks, and I think he had 7 for 71 last week. Matt, you kind of touched on Jason Witten. In season long, yeah, you definitely avoid him if you have other options. But he's only $3,200 on DraftKings, so he's going to clear up a lot of space for you if you kind of want to punt the position a little bit. Kind of touched on Brandon Whedon's just kind of we saw it last year with Cameron and Josh Gordon. He's just going to kind of zero in on his tight end number one wide receiver, and Witten caught the touchdown from him last week. I wouldn't expect a touchdown from him, but $3,200, you kind of want to target that. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the 2.5 price model, but basically you look at the price of your player on DraftKings and multiply that number by 2.5, and that should meet value. So if you so your $50,000 salary, your target is about 125 to 130 points. Witten only needs 6.5 PPR points to meet value. 3 catches for 35 yards is really reasonable. And then anything over that, he's exceeding value. So at that cheap, he's definitely worth a play in cash games. Like I said, Alex Smith, if you want to go super cheap at quarterback, Russell Wilson and Cap are my top cash game quarterback plays. And you could always throw out the expensive guys if you want to work around them. Andrew Luck's obviously a super high floor guy, and then everyone else I touched on are value plays I'm looking at in cash games.
Cool.
Well, lots of great stuff there from TJ. One thing I wanted to get your take on before we do questions here, and that's Michael Floyd. He's so cheap. I don't know if I heard you mention him, but he's like 3,800. And after the 0 point.
I didn't touch on Michael Floyd. He's a really good value this week on DraftKings. His price is
3,800.
It is 3,800. Okay, I'm rolling him out in a lot of GPPs. I'm building FanDuel lineups as we speak, heavily trying to get them in. But I'm rolling them out in a lot of GPPs because people obviously are going to be off of him after that performance last week. Not putting him in cash games. Again, Andrew Hawkins at 4,900. You guys touched on Edelman a little bit, but he's only $4,100, and again, I don't think Patriots are going to be pushing the ball down the field. So I think he's still getting the targets. He's had a case of the dropsies, but I think they got to go to a little bit more of a short passing game this week. So if I'm going super cheap, I'd rather go Edelman in cash games. But definitely Michael Floyd and GPPs this week. A lot of people are going to be off him, and he can easily have that 100 yard, 1 or 2 touchdown game with his deep ball ability.
Yeah, I'm telling you, you can build some really interesting GPP lineups with that Alex Smith, Wayne Bowe stack, which I'm crazy with too. And then putting Jeremy Hill and Michael Floyd in there, you can get some really interesting plays the rest of the way.
One last one, if you just want to go a super crazy off the wall, if you're playing a millionaire maker and you're going against 90,000 people, well, it's probably not going to be 90,000 this week. Call me crazy, but throw Stedman Bailey out there. He's basically min salary everywhere. With Brian Quick out, Kenny Britt's Kenny Britt, and we've seen Stedman Bailey flash on special teams. If you just want to go min salary receiver, they're going to have to throw the ball to catch up. They're 10-point underdogs. Niners aren't that great of a secondary. So if you just want to go super off the wall, Stedman Bailey's minimum salary, and he could free up a lot of stuff for you.
Well, we know Draft Twitter loves Stedman Bailey, and so we'll see if that ever comes to fruition. But, okay, so great daily stuff from TJ there. Just fantastic as always, especially about some of the tricks and the ways you can screw with the system. TJ, do you just want to stick on with us while we take like 3 or 4 of our last few questions and then we get out of here, or do you need to go do your fan?
Sure. I'll just I'll hang for a minute. I'm just building these lineups, and if you hear me cursing, it's because I don't know who to plug in. Okay,
well, that's fine. We do have a parental advisory warning on the show. No, I'm just kidding.
Perfect, I need it.
Yeah, oh my God, I definitely need it. Somehow I keep myself under control, but that's not indicative of my real life. But anyway, so we'll just skip over that. Back to our last few questions here. These are ones we got on the hashtag, and one that we actually got from on the Sportable card, which I didn't mention up top, is another way you can get questions to us. The card on Sportable you can comment on, and you should all be going to Sportable anyways because they're the best. We've got a great team over there. But all right, so this one comes in from one of our loyal listeners, @BallIsTim. He asked us Travis Kelce or Dwayne Allen. It's a 10-team non-PPR. I will throw that out to the committee. Travis Kelce or Dwayne Allen?
I think for me, you got to go with Allen just because the matchup's right there for him. The Colts should be in a high-powered. It should be a really offensive game for the Colts. They should get a lot of plays off against this beat-up Giants defense. And I think that Dwayne Allen is becoming a really good player for them. It hasn't really shown in one full game yet, but he's had a lot of touchdowns and big plays. And I think that we can see it. We can see a touchdown in this game against the Giants.
Yeah, I love Travis Kelce. I really like Dwayne Allen too, but I mean I love Kelce almost as much, probably more than I love TJ, but that's different. So I love Dwayne Allen. I mean, I love Travis Kelce, but I think you do go with Allen. It's just a little safer at this point. Kelce is a if they featured him, it'd be great, but they don't. So that's just part of reality. TJ, do you have a strong feeling either way on those two?
No, kind of same thoughts. They just don't use Kelce enough. The Colts use tight ends in the red zone as much as anyone. Between Dwayne Allen and Coby Fleener, they have 12 targets.
Must not be named.
Inside the 10-yard line. So high over under in that game. Kelce's not getting a ton of snaps. In your season longs, you kind of want to approach it like a head-to-head daily fantasy contest. You want to lower that floor and maximize opportunity over upside since it's a head-to-head game. So I like Allen over Kelce this week.
Okay, next question comes in from Michael Stephanie, another one of our loyal listeners, and he asks us, picked up Martavis Bryant in several leagues, PPR and standard. Is he a good wide receiver 3 flex play this week? And would you drop Edelman for him? For me, I've already mentioned on this show a few times, I'm not crazy about playing guys other than the studs in the Baltimore-Pittsburgh game. So I'm not sure I want to roll Bryant out there again this week, though I do think you can get away with him with 6 teams on a bye as a wide receiver 3 flex play. especially if you need that upside in your lineup. And as for would I drop Edelman for Bryant? Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, and that's if you know me as a fantasy player, that should be a given. I'm always going to go with the young side guy who's playing really well over the, low floor or veteran. But anyone else have any different feelings
Yeah, I
on
mean, I
that?
think that it's going to come down to game flow, like you mentioned, Matt, and I kind of see this game flow going a little differently than you do. I think that there'll be a lot more plays for the both offenses, I should say, Baltimore and Steelers. So I would go with Brian, and I kind of agree with you. Talent tends to win out, and at this point, I'm very down on Edelman's role going forward with the emergence of LaFell and Gronkowski coming back to becoming Gronkowski.
All right, and this last one on my end, I don't know if you got any more, Dan, you want to read off, but the last one I got was on the card from a guest user, and he asked us Charles Sims, Miles Austin, Dante Moncrief, or Dwayne Bowe. I need a wide receiver 3 and a flex on a brutal bye week, so we need to pick 2 out of there. I think we can automatically rule out Charles Sims because he's not playing, so that would help. Miles Austin, no thank you. I'm actually going to go with Dante Moncrief and Dwayne Bowe. I've mentioned how I'm a little irrationally high on Dwayne Bowe this week, and that'll probably come back and bite me, but maybe not. We'll see. And Moncrief, Dan and I talked a lot about Moncrief to actually kick the show off. So I'm going to go with Moncrief in a game that I expect there to be a lot of points, and Reggie Wayne isn't playing, so Moncrief's role is growing. So I go with Dwayne Bowe and Dante Moncrief. I don't think either of you are going to say to play Charles Sims, so do either one of you want to throw Miles Austin into that mix?
No, this is a Moncrief Bowe call. I'm even a little irrationally high on Bowe myself. I don't know why. I feel like every single year and every single matchup I like Bowe, and I don't even understand why at this point, but I've always liked him. But he should be decent. But I think Moncrief's one with the higher ceiling. We touched on why before. But I think those are the 2 easy plays there. I'm not going to buy into Miles Austin.
I'm a complete agreement with you guys. I mean, you can't ignore the matchup against the Jets. Moncrief's an interesting play if you're maybe a big underdog and you need big upside. That's a high over/under game. They're gonna throw the ball a bunch. But in a regular situation, I'm probably gonna play Bowe there. I know I said I'd rather have Jamal Charles in a GPP, but that's just because he's a lot more likely to go nuclear than Bowe. But that doesn't mean I wouldn't play Bowe in a season long this week with that matchup. I think he'll be all right.
Look, I mean, we know this about Dwayne Bowe. When he actually gives a shit about football, he is a good player. And so maybe he gives a shit this game. We'll see. But
we'll see that. That's to be determined.
We'll see how much money I lose off betting that he does. But anyways, it's always fun. So Dan, you did send me one last one, I think, in our chat. And this one was who to start: Trent Richardson, Frank Gore, Pierre Garçon, or Larry Donnell. Need only one. I'm going to rule Trent Richardson off right off the bat. I like Frank Gore this week. Pierre Garçon, I'm kind of shying away from some of the Washington players with this being RG3's first game back, though we know he does like to throw to Garçon. So that could be. And I like Larry Donnell too. I'm actually gonna. So it's between Gore and Donnell to me.
Did they say if it's PPR or not?
I don't know, Dan. I think you got this question. Is it a PPR league or not?
No information on that.
Okay.
Or guys, let us know if it's PPR.
Yeah, it always helps. I think I'm going to go with Donnell just because I expect there to be more points in this game. I'm not sure how. I'm sure the 49ers will beat the Rams, but I'm not sure how it happens, whether it's by Kaepernick or whether it's by Gore. So I'm going to go with Donnell just because I expect there to be more points. But what do you guys think?
I think that all 3 plays between Garçon, Donnell, and Gore are going to get some more points than you think. I would shy away from Garçon because I don't like the game flow for the Redskins, and I think that Minnesota will control the clock. I would lean towards Gore over Donnell just because I think Gore has a higher touchdown potential, and he should score. Like I mentioned earlier on the show, his touchdowns are set to regress in the positive direction over the last half of the season. There's no way he'll only score 1 rushing touchdown like he did the first half. So Gore's my play here. I think it gets started this week in a game where the Niners really jump out ahead early and blow out the Rams.
Yeah, I'm gonna say Gordon Standard, Donnell, and PPR.
Nice.
Yep, works for me. All right, anyone else get any more questions we need to address?
I've got one more we want to touch on from Rebecca Smith. She's a very loyal follower of ours, so she sent one more our way. She had a question earlier. This one is the second question, which is she wants to know Alfred Morris at Minnesota or Michael Floyd against Dallas. And I think we've touched on this a lot, Rebecca. But just to recap, we all three of us really like Michael Floyd this week. We think that last week was kind of a mirage. It's not set to happen again that type of week. And Alfred Morris against Minnesota is not great. Minnesota's been really, really good against the run this year, and they should be able to stop him early. He's not getting another Dallas matchup, so don't be fooled by how he played last week. To me, this one's pretty easy. Michael Floyd. Do you guys see it differently?
Yeah, to be honest, I don't really want to play Alfred Morris unless I'm like, well, I need 8 points or 9 points for sure, because that's really it. That's the ceiling, unless he scores a bunch of touchdowns.
And you're not guaranteed he's gonna get the looks at the goal line, even if they get down there either.
Exactly. God knows they could go to that fullback. What I forget his name now. Yeah, Darryl Young. But anyway, so I'm gonna go with Floyd.
Agreed.
All right, cool. Well, this has been a nice long edition of Week 9 Hot Takes and Hot Cakes. We had a lot of really good information on the show, so we appreciate everybody that stuck around and listened and took us right here close to kickoff. We're all going to head out. Last words from me, make sure you check out Sportable. Lots of great information. I'll be running the Rapid Reaction blog this week. I know Dan does a lot of good stuff there in addition to the show, and TJ always has a few good cards that he does on his daily thoughts. So a lot of great information on Sportable that you just need to be a part of. It's a growing website. It's a growing community of writers that we all really respect and enjoy. So that's it from me, and you can follow all of our work there. Dan, TJ, closing thoughts.
Yeah, just the same thing. Check out Sportable. We're all there. Like Matt said, it's growing, and it's a big community of fantasy players. We're all kind of in this in the same way. We all look at this the same way. We have the lingo we've developed. What I like, what TJ says a lot, the DFS lingo that he's kind of come up with, and a lot of it sounds a lot like poker when I used to be into poker. So it's kind of funny from that sense. But listen, we're all in this. We're all bouncing off the same ideas, and hopefully we can provide you some actionable information on Sportable, and that's what we try to do. It's concise content, and it's just kind of what you need to act on fast without having to read through a bunch of clutter.
That's always the best. TJ, the floor is yours to close here.
Check out Sportable. We love Sal.
There you go.
Yeah,
Sal is the man.
We heart Sal. Very, 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 very good supportive guy there. But all right, we're gonna head out here. So appreciate everybody sticking with us, and guys, good luck to everyone, especially you, TJ and Dan. Let's go win some money and have a good time.
There we
Good
go.
luck, guys.
Have a good one, guys.
Later.